Awesome. Well, welcome to the July 17th edition of the Data Nerd Herd. So this is usually a Friday discussion, lunchtime chat about data. I'd like to introduce, people to, let's say, others in the data industry who are doing some really cool stuff. Freddy's somebody I met on LinkedIn and we've been friends on LinkedIn for quite a while now. And I think he's working on some really cool stuff. He's always posting this awesome R projects that he's working on. I'm like, this is really cool. I wish I had more time to do that myself. But he's got this really cool project he's been working on called NDEXR. And it's a publicly available data analysis platform for Reddit. So we're going to get into that. And again, this is we want to kind of try and keep it more of a discussion-oriented format versus your typical meetup where you kind of like hang out and listen to somebody talk for 45 minutes. I mean, it's definitely an open discussion, ask questions, just give some good input and keep it pretty candid. And with that, I'll turn it over to Freddy. So.
Cool. Yeah. So thanks everyone for showing up. I appreciate it. And, before I get started, I'll just say like, I am doing things and there are some things that I'm doing that I think from a security perspective, I might get my hands slapped a little bit. So just know that I don't come from a security background. However, I do have some things in place for security with what I'm doing. And the reason why I say that is because, I've been working on systems within AWS for a very long time. However, I have a baby and a wife. And so what I can't do is go spend tons and tons of money on AWS day to day. And so, I see like really cool systems like RStudio Connect, where you have, hosted RStudio server, Shiny server. Or you see like a really cool GPU or a really, big a server that, I wish I had my hands on all the time, but it cost me $7 an hour. So what I've been able to do is build this platform around analyzing Reddit data where if you give me your IP address, you can, get into my internal computers and access this data and play around with it. So I'll go ahead and share my screen and get started. Can I share my screen? It says it's disabled.
Try again. Sorry about that.
Okay, cool. Yes, that looks good. Share. Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
You can? Okay, great, thanks. All right, so let me close this. All right. So why is this project cool? Well, I'm a little bit ADD and I want to know how to do everything. Ideally, one of these days, I'm like vice president of data where I can tell everyone how to do everything. But in order to do that, you have to like learn the processes. You have to have some trial and error, learn from other people, and build these systems from the ground up. So when I was at Digital First Media, it's an advertising company and newspaper company in Denver, I was the R guy in between the data engineers and the front-end developers, building an R API in order to hook up our optimization platform for advertising purposes. And so I got really interested in data engineering because for one, whenever I get crappy data, it makes my life miserable. And so, you wonder like, how does that happen? How can we make those things better? But then on the other hand, it's really cool to see everything packaged up into a nice presentation. So I have, there's one repo which does everything that you're about to see and everything runs in Docker. And with the repository that I'm using, you could strip it to do, other things. So, I've been trying to think about like, what is the life cycle of start to finish from grabbing data from the API, organizing that data, and orchestrating, taking that data, popping it into, a database, obtaining that data, building an API, and then presenting it. And then, you can present it, but a lot of the fun happens, before the presentation of that data, where you actually get in and start to, do interesting things with it. So what's running this platform? Well, I have a Dell XPS in my kitchen, which is running Airflow and Elasticsearch. I have a Lenovo laptop. Both of these are running Ubuntu server internally. This is running the website and the API. And then I just recently bought a Dell PowerEdge, which is a big rack server. And what I found is that my wife's not too happy about it. It's super loud. And the other problem is that we have an AC in the room next door, and I can only do one at a time. I can either run the AC or I can run the computer, because otherwise the power shorts out. And then I've got an EC2 instance. I think I'm going to go ahead and just show the website first. So this is a Shiny application, and this is running on the Dell XPS in the kitchen, which you can access freely from the web. In order to set up this process, it's something I do like port forwarding using Auto SSH. And if anyone is ever interested in figuring out how to like hook up your local systems to an outside system, I'm happy to do that. But what's happening here is you hit an EC2 server on AWS, and then it forwards you to this Shiny application. So for example, if I did 192.168.0.52, port 3000, I'm hitting my internal computer, which is running this application. So to date, I've collected about close to 40 million submissions from Reddit. And there's a lot of really interesting information in there. Found, 6.5 million authors and almost 1 million subreddits. So you can imagine, like, okay, so we have all these submissions, what can we do with them? Which is the question that I've been asking myself. So, this is the app. And then there's a little search area where if you wanted to kind of take a dive into the data, I'm running Elasticsearch here. And, so if we did, data science, then it will go out and it will look for all the submissions that, related to data science, and then also post images related to that search query. So Elasticsearch is something that I found, just kind of off the wall, because I had initially set this up with a SQL I like, which is, you just say, from submissions where, submission, I like data science, right? Well, that was extremely slow. And so I looked around for Elasticsearch, found it. And so, what you're doing here is you're on a small laptop looking and querying, 40 million submissions. And you're almost getting instantaneous results back about data science or, sunsets or something, right? So that's this little spot here. Some other code. So this is a part to deconstruct submissions. So let me show you what I mean by that. So there's a lot of data from Reddit, and there's a lot of things you could do with it. You could say, what is a particular search term or term that is trending right now? Like, what does that look like? Like Black Lives Matter, which I'll show you here in a little bit. Or, Miss Maxwell is in the news recently, right? So, you could look at like key term trending, Or, you know, you might think, well, how could I do something with natural language processing? But for natural language processing, you know, if you wanted to, like, you know, take text and predict on that text in one way or another, one thing that I was thinking is that would be very useful if you could take the thread tree and clean it up a little bit. So for example, here on Reddit, you can have multiple replies to a single parent thread. So you have parent, child, child, parent, child. So what that, you know, submission deconstructor does is it looks at the endpoints. It looks at the children without, or it looks at the threads without children, starts there, and then moves upward up the tree. So this would be one thread, and then this would be a thread here. So if you wanted to, you know, you could take these individual conversations, separate them within, you know, the comments of a submission, and use them for some sort of, you know, natural language processing task. Maybe you want to look at, you know, people who are trolling other people, potentially spreading this information. You know, I have no idea. Right now, I'm just kind of building the infrastructure, and I'm really interested in having people hop in and start playing with this data, so that we can, you know, share it with other people. So for example, here you have thread number 46, which has what I've created as like an engagement ratio, which is basically just observations over authors. And whenever you look at this fraction here, you know, you get a lot of observations with small numbers of authors, and you could pull out, you know, from that Reddit thread a conversation which happened over, you know, a particular period of time. Let's see. And then what else I have on here? The ability to look at my costs for AWS, because that's important, right? So month to date, I've spent about 45 bucks. And then here I have links related to services that I've built out here. These private routes and monitoring are only available to people who have their IP address whitelisted. Okay, so let me go into the presentation a little bit more. So this is my best attempt to explain the network of this system that I built. So you, end user, hit NDEXR.com, and depending on the link that you're clicking on, you know, it will take you or use something inside my house. So like, this is AWS. This here is literally in-house, in my kitchen and in my living room or my upstairs room. So on the PowerEdge server, I'm running RStudio, Jupyter Lab, long-term data storage with Postgres, which is available to people who have their IP, and then glimpses, which is monitoring of that system. And so if you were to look at, say, NDEXR.com 61211, it would take you to port 61208 on the PowerEdge and take you to glimpses. And so I can demonstrate that here real quick. So 61211, right here. So this is taking me to port 61211 on NDEXR.com. But if I went to 192.68.0.59, and then what was it, 61208, 61208, you would be, you know, forwarded from NDEXR.com 61211 to the internal, well, it's, maybe I don't have the port right. Let me see, maybe it's just going slowly. 61208. 6121. Well, I know it's working. Maybe I've got the port wrong. My documentation there. Let's try this one. I think I've got the, oh, well, it's not a big deal. I know it's working. I think it's just going slow. All right. Actually kind of bugging me. SSH. So this is actually the command to copy, you know, so you would run auto SSH from your local computer. Yeah, it says 61208 right there. Unusual. Okay, well, I'll figure that out later. Where was I at? There we go. All right. Other stuff that's set up, Apache Airflow, RStudio, Jupyter Lab, and then PG admin as well. Trying to get to my links up here. All right, so everything kind of starts with Airflow. This DAG here is, how many people here are familiar with Airflow?
Not at all.
Not at all? Okay, well, Airflow rocks. Airflow is, it's a scheduler, it's cron on steroids. So instead of having, you know, one script that you write out that, you know, that does something for you, right? Airflow can create something called a DAG, or a directed acyclic graph, and run these scripts in succession based on how you've created that graph. So let me actually go to my next slide, because I talk a little bit more about this. So this is that. So this is what happens day to day. Airflow orchestrates the data engineering part of this project. It's directing the scripts which gather submissions continuously, and then once a day on the XPS, the Dell XPS computer that I have in my kitchen here, those submissions are being stored. So once a day, this is what happens. Submissions in the Postgres database on my small laptop are stored into S3. And then once those submissions are stored into S3, the big server checks that new submissions have been stored, and then updates materialized views within that server upstairs. And then it also runs and updates data into Elasticsearch. Simultaneously, we're getting new costs from API, storing them in this PowerEdge server, and then all of the new statistics from the big server are then pushed to my smaller server, my smaller Postgres instance. So one issue that I ran into was that, well, for one, I can't seem to keep this 40-core, 128 gigabyte server running continuously. So, but I also need that for processing. So, you know, because I can't keep it open or keep it on all the time, you know, one of the smaller laptops is handling that continuous data gathering, dumping it into S3. And then whenever I get this computer turned back on, then the DAGs just, you know, these other scripts run to do the rest of the updates. So here, this is kind of what that process looks like. So there's a script to set up AWS keys, update costs, and then all of the new data that's been gathered that day is dumped into S3. And then we transfer the data from S3 into the PowerEdge server, which is the big server. All of the materialized views are updated. data is pushed into Elasticsearch, and then finally, all of the little statistics are updated about what's been gathered. And as you can see, some days it completes, and then other days that server is off. And what Airflow is really good about is telling you, like, well, this failed. This is how long it took yesterday, right? So you get a whole bunch of insight into how you're moving your data around. And you know, this is, as a data engineer, I would be, you know, really happy to have systems like this in place, because it gives you that historical information about how those systems are running. So that's Airflow, and all of this is within a container. What's next? So there's two R packages that run here. Let me pull it up, that I've written. Let's go to the repo right here. One called, let me see here, Bigger, which, if you can't tell, I'm a fan of like the 5-letter package names, right? So Bigger is a R wrapper for the Python library Bodo 3, which gives you AWS access. So in here, there's a whole lot of like R functions for creating images, modifying images. There's some scripts that will boot up a GPU for you on AWS, create key files, work with S3. And so this is the one R package that's actually, you know, driving the communication with AWS. And then there's this Redditor API, which handles all of the, you know, communication with Reddit. Each of these packages are wrappers for Python modules. And what you have to do is you have to set up a virtual environment using Reticulate. So this is just a script that I wrote to actually get that on your system if you're interested. But it's probably not super important for us right here. Jumping into the Redditor R package, which is driving a lot of, you know, the UI as well as some of the data gathering. There's a couple functions. Right now, this one is called just get submission, and you say, you know, where you want to get submissions from. Your Reddit connector, which is this is written in both R and Python, so is this get submission function. But as the you know, external R user, you don't have to think about that. We're saying get submissions from all new limit 10. And so this is actually something that runs like every 30 seconds with a limit of 1,000. And you know, you can get your new submissions. There's another function, get URL, which you can pass a permalink to, which is just reddit.com/r whatever else. And then it will go out and grab the information. For some reason, I didn't get the actual metadata returned here, which is unusual. So I think I might have a bug. But if you're working with me and you're on this internal system, one thing that I've been thinking about is something like kind of related to like a I don't know if anyone's ever heard of SETI at home, where, you know, you have like distributed work done on different computers to basically see if like we can find information related to aliens, right? Or you know, some sort of like life elsewhere, right? So in the same vein, there's this function store, or this parameter store, true, and then comments to words. So if this is passed and you have your environment variables configured correctly, then every time you hit these comments, they'll be stored in the database. So that way, you only have to hit and use your API once in order to get this information. And then once this information is gathered, everybody has access to it. Because comments are a lot harder to pull than submissions because there's just so many more of them. So these are the comment threads that I was talking a little bit about earlier to deconstruct a submission. These are the IDs, and if you pass them to this function, then it will create all of your different threads here. I'm running our APIs. Just stop me if anyone has questions. I don't want to bore everyone. But here, this is the markup to create an R API using Plumber. You just say, hey, this is unbox.json or an Excel file or an image. You pass your parameters and then make sure that you return the response correctly, and then you've got an API. So so that's how you would set up your API. And if anyone has questions about anything that I'm talking about, there's like so much, I don't even know how to talk about it all. Let me know. I'm happy to sit down and teach you or show you any part of this at any point in time after we get out of here. And then the API is load balanced with NGINX. So NGINX is it's a web server. And it's pretty cool. So whenever I said, hey, if you hit indexer.com, that defaults to port 80, it actually passes you to indexer.com 3000, which is the port that the Shiny server is also running on. Whenever you hit indexer.com/API, it's going to pass you to one of the following 5 ports, which direct you to internally in my house, one of the 5 different Docker containers running the API. And then if you said /elastic, that would pass you to indexer.com 9200, which is where Elasticsearch in my house is communicating with the outside world. So data, that's just interesting. So now that there's all this infrastructure, and I'm still kind of working on that, what can we start to do with it? Now, I haven't really got to the data science phase so much as I'm just in the counting phase. So if we look here, since I've started gathering data, and here, these are just outages where I was like doing work or trying to build something, or, I had a bug or something. We could start to look at key phrases and keywords, right? So here's Black Lives Matter and then George Floyd. So, you could start to look at like world events, right? And say like, hey, we're talking about these things. Is there a duration? And I think what's really interesting is that for these events that are high impact, they tend to follow this log normal distribution. And so there's a part of me that wonders, like, could you hear about a world event, and then, once you've seen this, like this ping, right, this acceleration, over this period of time, the duration here, as well as the total number of submissions at peak, like, could you predict the tail here? And I think that you could. So that's, some of the, interesting keywords that I found. Here's, I think it's Ghislaine Maxwell. She's kind of talked about, but boom, she goes to prison, and now everyone's talking about her. Trump just seems to be pretty consistent. So there's that.
Freddy?
Yeah, go ahead.
What type or what portions of Reddit are you monitoring to get the data? So
submissions, literally all of them. Comments, I'm not doing comments yet. So the Python module for this does allow you to stream submissions and comments as they're coming in. So you know, a lot of bots use those because like say someone makes a post, it immediately wants to like tell you whether or not that post is appropriate, right? So you'll have bots that stream, say, our politics, and you'll see those posts where it's like auto moderator, right? It's immediately after that, right? So you could write that bot in Python. As that submission comes in, you automatically get it. Now for comments, you can do that, but what I noticed is that I get like about a third of the comments coming in, or less, just because they're in such higher volume. Which is why I started like, okay, well, every time I grab comments, I want to save them. And I think how to handle comments, or to grab as many comments as I possibly can, I still haven't quite figured out yet. Yeah, does that answer your question?
Yeah. And then are you storing images or anything, or is your database actually pretty small compared to the content?
So I'm actually going to show you what the data looks like now. So let's just do that, right? So here's PyCharm. I love PyCharm. PyCharm is great. Not only can I write R in PyCharm or Python, you also have your data grip. Oops. You can have data grip here, as well as one of my favorite things is this start SSH session, where, hey, I just want to like SSH into AWS, and then boom, I've got it. Who am I? I'm Ubuntu, right? Oh, okay, well, I should write that right? Who am I? Who am I? Right here, I'm F. Drennan, right? So this SSH, start SSH session is a really nice little feature there. So submissions, I'm not storing images, but what you do get are the links to the images. And so in the Shiny app, I'm referencing, I think it's short link, you know, which is, I think this is what gives you the images, or it was thumbnail URL. There's a couple of different ones that can be equivalent, even though, you know, you've got like the shorthand, right? Here it is, yeah, URL. So this is what the submissions look like. I've created a submission key. You have the date that it was submitted, the author's full name, just metadata about the author and the submission itself. Downs are 0 here because we're getting them like as they're coming in. What else? You know, there's the links and whether or not it's like an over 18 post. So clearly some of the labels here are clearly over 18. This isn't very helpful at the get-go. You know, it's nice having it here, but what I've been trying to figure out is like, you know, before you even start thinking about, you know, complex models or whatever, why don't we just start counting things? And so what I've done is I have 3 tables which run part of that that Airflow process related to authors, subreddits, and URLs specifically, and they're highly similar, other than this first row is swapped out. So here are authors which have posted. Here's the first observation of that author, the most recent. The number of hours that I've seen them or observed them doing things. So for example, if they posted at 9 a.m. every day for a week, this would be 7. If they posted at 9 a.m. and 2 p.m. every single day for that week, then this would say 14. So this is just the number of unique hours that they've been posted in. How many subreddits that author has been seen in. So here, this is a null author where I don't get one back. So that's going to be higher. But, and it's sort of by alphabetical, right? So there's all these really stupid author names, which is just part of it, right? So you know, I have some counts. So the number of subreddits that they've been observed in, the number of unique URLs, unique titles, let's see what else. And then whether it's over 18 and the number of submissions that authors made. It's the same thing for the URLs here. So for example, if we wanted to look at like what are some of the most popular URLs, actually we could do this, sort by number of authors. So for any given, should sort with higher numbers than 1 on the right. Sort descending. This is, oh, it's still querying, okay.
Maybe I missed this at the beginning, but how long have you been working on this end to end, just as we're waiting for the query?
Oh yeah, sure. Well, coding, if you look at GitHub, it's going to tell you about 3 months. But some of these packages I'd written, like that bigger package, I wrote, you know, maybe a year or two ago. Oh my goodness. It's like I saw it and then I just don't know if it should be an up arrow or a down arrow. Yeah, so about three months now. On this project specifically. There's a joke in here I wanted to show you guys, but I have to have it sort correctly.
Do you know off the top of your head how big your database is?
So for submissions, I think it's somewhere around 25 to 30 gigs. Okay, and I have up to 2.5 terabytes on that server. So at some point, I'm going to have to go back and you know, data doesn't last forever, right? So now it's sorted. So these are URLs which have you know, this one has 1,000 unique authors, you know, associated with it. So this is telling me that like 1,000 unique people have posted this URL. Or that's the number of, okay. I'm not sure if that's a distinctor count, so I apologize. I don't know everything. So, you know, so what can we find here? Well, I don't know. Let's see. Here's a post which has an authors of 113, and then it's been posted in 112 unique hours. And so, you know, you start wondering.
I know that URL.
Yeah, do you? Oh, well, okay, we gotta wait for the ad. But it's never gonna give you up, right? So there are interesting things that you can find once you just start counting stuff. So here's you know, here's your Rickroll, and I really think that this is unique authors, but it, you know, I'd have to double check my code. I don't know everything. So, you know, you start to wonder, like, what's a good way to like measure like the dispersion of a URL that is shared. You know, like, what's the difference between a URL being shared 1,000 times by one person or it being shared 1,000 times by 500 people? Just looking at simple ratios, like, what can that tell us? You know, if we were to look at one author who's posting, you know, one URL in 30 different subreddits, what does that tell you about that author versus an author who posts 30 different URLs in 30 different subreddits, or 30 URLs in one subreddit, right? just looking at some of these basic fractions, I feel like that can start to tell you a whole lot about the intentions of someone that's posting, or the, you know, the activity of that person who's posting, before you even get into the actual content. So, you know, this is kind of where I've been going with some of these tables here, the URL summaries, and then author, and then here's subreddit. So one thing that I've noticed is that I'm displaying information on my Shiny app. I have a remove not safe for work button, but it's not quite there. And so what I'm also considering doing is just looking at like the ratio of over 18 posts versus the number of submissions that I've collected. And if that's too high, then just removing that so people don't have to see porn. Because like Reddit's like 30% porn. So I guess that's kind of like the spiel of all that I've done and created. What I would say to you and everyone here is that if you're interested in playing with this data, please let me know and I can give you access. Or if there's a particular part of you know, this process that I've you know, that was interesting to you, I'd be happy to sit down and help you set it up. One thing that I am looking at doing is just stripping all of the Reddit specific code and just having that repo set up so that people can you know, spin it up and create their own R package or their own Python package in order to kind of have like the same workflow, right? But I'm going to stop talking for now, and because, you know, it's kind of quiet and there's 15 minutes left. So if anyone has questions, you know, be great to hear them, or, you know, feedback, you know, whatever.
What are some of the more interesting analytical use cases that you would imagine for this data set?
Yeah, well, so I think that's kind of what I'm still trying to figure out, right? You know, I think that it would be possible to look at some of these keywords and see, you know, find trending keywords related to news stories, and like I said, like kind of like see if we can predict the duration of them. One thing that I would really like to see or to start playing around with is, you know, see if we can start to identify URLs like host. Okay, here, let me show you this. So for example, here in this URL summary, I do have all the host names for that URL. It's just a little bit of regex. It would be interesting to start like classifying where information is coming from, and, you know, whether or not it's typically trustworthy or truthful. There's a lot of, you know, there are subreddits related to people who are specifically just posting about fake news and sites that share misinformation. And so like, could you pull from those subreddits where people are already kind of like doing the manual work for you, and then begin to take that information and project that information onto new URLs or news sources?
So you're thinking that could be like a training set then?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I think whenever I think of like all the interesting things that you could do with this data, like my mind kind of explodes with like all of these different ideas, right? So, you know, here's all the URLs, but, you know, I think generally speaking, working on classification of subreddits, sources of information, like these host names and authors, is what I would like to start getting to. You can create a bot, and so it would be kind of cool to have available to people the ability to like read information or get information from you know, an author or some other person who's submitting, and then just be able to run like a history and give them back a number, you know, based on like the types of things that person typically engages in, almost like a summary of that host name, subreddit, or author specifically. You know, it's pretty wide open. It's just kind of fun putting all this stuff together and seeing what comes out of it.
One thing that I think could be interesting is you have all of these trends on Reddit, which is one platform. You could compare them to something like Twitter and just see, you know, what trends are Reddit exclusive, what trends are more globally across all social media, and just
yeah, I think that would be interesting.
Reddit is.
Yeah, it definitely would. I currently don't have API keys to Twitter, and they've made it pretty hard to get them because they're definitely cracking down. Reddit is really decentralized, and it's kind of like a no man's land whenever it comes to moderation. Well, the moderation is kept up by the moderators of that of Reddit, you know, subreddit specifically, not necessarily like the head of subreddit. So yeah, no, I think that would be interesting. I think you might have to be careful because if you read the API documentation, there's definitely clauses in there about like cross-referencing other platforms in order to like figure out certain things, right? So you're not really supposed to use this to try and figure out like identities or whatever. And I think cross-referencing those two platforms can, if it's found out, you know, could prevent you from being able to use their API.
That as well. I just posted a link in the chat, but I went to a seminar based off a guy, Peter Dodds. He's at the University of Vermont, and he did kind of that same thing with Twitter, where he did a bunch of NLP, and he got special access to, like, I think it's 10% about, he funnels like 10% of their tweets or something, and creates a happiness meter. So that link, like you can see the hodometer is what he calls it, or hodometer, whatever.
Yeah.
And so you could kind of, that's what I first thought of when I saw this kind of enormous amounts of post data, right, is something similar.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. Yeah, this is interesting. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, these are all ideas that, you know, I'm kind of just trying to like build like an online community where people can hang out and work on something together, right? So this is really interesting. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, one thing that caught my attention was your counts of like BLM and then Trump and a few other. I can't remember what chart that was.
Yeah, so this is Ghislaine, you know, the.
Yeah, that one. Yeah, it would be interesting to maybe start correlating different topic areas together to see where there might be some strong signal.
Right. Yeah. I mean, these are really collinear, right? And even here with Trump, you know, like if you have this boost here, it might be like Trump says this about that, right?
Exactly. And that's what caught my attention is like Trump, like one of these looks kind of like the other. So, but yeah, I mean, it would be interesting to see like what the confluence of like, you know, Reddit chatter brings together.
Right. Yeah, I agree. And, you know, they call it the front page of the internet. You know, it seems like half the time I'm on Reddit and then 3 days later I see it on Facebook. So, you know, it's kind of cool to just have all of this information related to anything and everything about human behavior just sitting on a computer for you to start playing with. You know.
And with that, I'd be really curious as far as like survivalship curves or like timelines as far as, you know, how long will a certain social movement trend last, or a certain you know, keyword be prevalent. And I'm assuming with this historical data you could find a lot of pattern detection, something like dynamic time series or something to find, you know, there's an uptick in a keyword, what does the ramification or timeline look like? That'd be interesting, I feel like.
Yeah, no, definitely. And actually one thing that I'm also doing here is, or at least I have around, is this, let me see if I have it over here. Steward. So I'm also taking comments and then like splitting them up with Spacey. So every time I take comments, it's splitting up these tokens and then submitting them. So, you know, one thing that, you know, I'm thinking about is like, okay, so like there's keywords that could be trending or not, right? But like, how do you know what keywords are interesting to start looking at? Because, you know, you'd have to like start to split apart those sentences in order to find those keywords that may be trending. And then you need to find like interesting keywords, right? So like my fan broke is probably, you know, 3 words that I don't care about, but like Black Lives Matter, those are 3 words that they're highly interesting. And so like, how do you figure out like what is an interesting 3-letter word versus a non-interesting 3-letter word, and then start to detect that? I have no idea, but that's what's fun about these projects is it forces you to think about things that you wouldn't have thought about beforehand.
It's interesting.
Yeah, Spacey is pretty cool because it'll give you all these parts of speech, and that's, you know, another little Python wrapper that I worked on.
What do you think that table is going to get?
Well, you know, it would get huge. So one thing that I did was, well, one, just create like some keys so that I don't have to store everything about that. But then also with the function that I wrote, it gives you the option to store it or not. So if I think it's interesting, then I'll store it. But it's not like an automated process which continues to grow and grow and grow.
Yeah.
You know, I wanted to have it for some group buys because my MacBook doesn't have as much memory, but you know, I don't think that something like this could grow indefinitely. But, you know, the systems that we have in place are finite: memory and hard drive storage and computation. And whenever you're presented with constraints, it forces you to figure out how to solve for those.
One thing you might want to look at is consolidate. If you're going to stick with Postgres, consolidating those into like a JSON object with a key. It'll save you, at least it'll compact it in your Postgres database. So.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good idea. Are you thinking like something like Mongo or something?
No,
like
I mean, you can store, if you want to say it's Postgres, you can have a JSON field.
Gotcha.
Parse it.
Oh,
yeah, so, yeah, exactly.
Oh, just like JSON in Postgres.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I saw the rows exploding. I saw the same IDs. And I was like, oh crap, this is gonna blow up at some point. So
yeah. Well, luckily it's not a true production system where people are running on it. So, you know, the one thing that I am doing here is this API will tell you where to get all the daily files. So if you hit this and you said download this file, then it, you know, you could get the data from May 4th.
Cool.
And this is their daily and updated daily. So if anyone wants to just come in here and, you know, hit get submission files, which is the default Plumber link here, you could take this and it'll be all CSVs, but you could play with it, or, you know, send me your IP and I'll give you access to the database.
And are you looking for contributors to this project as well?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just a guy hanging out. I mean, we're all, you know, socially distanced and, you know, unable to get together and do stuff. So by all means, you can ask me for Slack access and hop on. And, oh, you know, there was one other thing is all of the stuff that's running hits a Slack API and then gives updates. So if it's doing Elasticsearch stuff, or if there's like a Git webhook, or there's an error, then it'll pop it in the Slack channel where there's other people who've been interested in, you know, joining or submitting to the project. So.
Okay, there's a few names there. That's awesome. So,
yeah.
Cool. Yes, I can think of a few people this might be a fun project for to help out with. So.
Yeah, you know, I think it'd be cool if we could like find some Russian bots or whatever, but you know, I'm not going to keep the hopes that high. It's just, whoever wants to hop on and play and learn how to set all this stuff up, you know, I'm here and I'm willing to teach. I really enjoy that.
That's awesome. What are some ways that people can find you?
So LinkedIn, definitely. That's probably the best spot. Otherwise, my email is just drennanfreddy@gmail.com. But you know, I'm primarily on LinkedIn. I don't do much on Twitter. And the last time I checked, this actually took you to the Slack page. Okay, yeah. So once you actually log into Slack, this will take you to the Slack account and give you access to the Slack channel.
Cool. Awesome. Well, thanks, Freddy. I'm going to stop recording. Then we can.
Cool.
Yeah, thanks a lot, man.